Welcome back, everyone, to Moonstruck right here on Riot Radio. I'm your host, Ryan. Oh, I almost forgot something. Gotta represent with the sign here. So, yeah, right here on Riot Radio. Today we're going to be discussing the concept of aura as a complete subject. Looking at everything from the electromagnetic field of Earth that we don't tend to notice too much in the realm of that concept, all the way to trends or themes in anime that we can see with, like, Dragon Ball and stuff like that, where, this concept of aura or some kind of energetic field or energy around an individual has been, I guess, reviewed or proliferated a lot through the history of film and of other works of, like, I guess, art, you can say. So I'll take another sip of water just before we get started here. So as we all, or most of us, will probably know, up at, like, the North Pole and stuff, you can see stuff like the Aurora Borealis, also known as the Northern Lights, which we can see here on the screen. And this really is representing that aspect of what we would call the electromagnetic field, or I guess, electromagnetic field. I was going to separate them individually into electric or magnetic, but typically, as we've seen in physics, they've come to be known as one kind of unified force where they can translate into each other. And why this is kind of so imperative a lot of the times is because when we contemplate things like light, especially in the realm of, like, physics or science or any other, like, concept of, like, either that kind of viewpoint or some kind of sense of, like, divine energy being attached to it, then we start to look at these as a unified force. And the main point of light, just to go over stuff we've covered in the past here, is the concept of fluctuating, or rather, not fluctuating, oscillating electric and magnetic fields. So basically, you would have one wave and then the other perpendicular to it, and their oscillation is creating light, also known as, like, visible energy, right, that we can see. So with that being said, or also known as photons, just to cover that as well. So electromagnetism, one force, we can see it displayed here over the poles of the Earth, specifically around the North and South Pole. We're just focusing on the North for right now. So the Northern Lights, also known as the Aurora Borealis, is really that pinnacle of what we can see of the Earth's, like, almost electromagnetic field. And this electromagnetic field, these rays are actually visible because the solar wind of the sun is hitting the Earth, but the Earth has, because it rotates, it forms a magnetic field around the Earth. So what happens is when the solar wind hits the planet, those rays are actually deflected by the upper atmosphere, like the magnetosphere and the ionosphere, and the harmful rays are deflected back out of the atmosphere. So you can almost think about it like, I don't know, almost like, say you have, like, an open faucet, like, running water, and you put, like, almost a like some kind of circular shape above the water, so the water just kind of runs down the side of the spherical shape, preventing it from flowing along a singular channel. So that's essentially the essence of what goes on when we have rays hitting the Earth. We have this same kind of effect of the electromagnetic rays bending around this object. So it's kind of interesting that this effect even occurs in the first place. So yeah, we have the second picture here of the Northern Lights as well. So yeah, as you can see, they can be different color as well. So this is quite interesting because again, we see in different parts of physics that, when you have light hitting a prism, for example, it splits into all those different wavelengths so we can see different color. Somewhat similar effect that's going on here when light hits a magnetic field, or in this case solar wind hits a magnetic field. You get that same kind of energy distribution effect, and we can only see it at night because it's very very subtle energy, right? So anyway, that's the basic concept of what is occurring with the northern lights here. So it's just a pretty interesting concept to actually look at in the first place, because like I think over the course of history, like human beings have kind of like come to find that things like aura as a concept or whatever is somewhat like, oh, not something I believe in, or it's not a concept that is like anything rooted in science, or any kind of well-researched frames of human endeavor or understanding. And I think that flat out is just not true, because we can see not only does it appear a lot in different aspects of film that, of course are have a tendency to be more, I guess, into the science fiction realm, but pretty much everything that we've considered science fiction at one time or another has happened to a degree. Of course, not all of them have come to fruition yet, but I think the concept that the aspect of translation is there between things that we see in film and things that we actually find out to be indeed true and factually proven at some later point stand. So with this being the concept around aura, I think this is like a really underrated concept, just because even if we look at like something like light, it seems that every aspect that governs how light associates to different things really spans out across the whole spectrum of what it encompasses. And what I mean by that is, like, say for example, you look at somebody's like favorite color, right? Most of the time you could tell like their favorite sports team, or like what kind of color car they might drive, or like a whole bunch of different array of aspects of that individual just based on their favorite color association, right? So I think like when that aspect is in play here, because we're talking about light, it also translates into your ability to sense the energy of what is actually resonating and feel the energy of an individual. So the point is that aura is not just like, it's not just color, and it's not just the electromagnetic field around the body, but it's also emotions and electricity and intentions and mentality and all these concepts that comprise what an individual is actually made up of, combined into one, right? So this is a it's some more talking than I'm usually used to in a day, so like I tend to get winded here a little bit. In essence though, that's like the main concept behind like I guess aura as it's typically seen. What I'll talk about further into today is really like not only just the concept behind that, but I'm actually going to get into a little bit about how you can like build that in some sense. So of course, one of the things that we know in like spiritual I guess concepts, that is like one way to kind of develop this field is like through meditation, because meditation is actually focused or prolonged attention on something. And I think that that's a really underrated concept in general, because if you think, if you contemplate it, it's funny because meditation actually sometimes means contemplation. But if you contemplate the concept that if you focus on one thing long enough, or you have full control over where you direct your attention to. And I'm not saying everybody who meditates will just like get this instantly or something. It's like something that comes and goes, and it's almost just like surfing. Sometimes you find a good wave, sometimes not so much. But if you had the ability to even somewhat direct your attention to where it's best suited to most of the time. Like you're pretty much a compass that can go anywhere you want, right? Because you'll always be able to focus on whatever aspect in the field that you want to either like go to or bring to you, right? Which is kind of like the concept around like manifestation, right? People talk about like, oh yeah, I want to manifest like this and that, right? Concept most overlooked about it is that a lot of times like you have to be like that thing that you want to attract to you or manifest, quote unquote, almost has to be part of who you are already to attract it to you, meaning that like something inside of you must resonate with that which you're calling out to in the field to a degree. So it's almost like how people talk about, like, say in sports or whatever, like people say, oh yeah, I visualized the win and then it happened that exact way, right? Like it's because not only did you do the training and you did all this stuff, but you intended to say, okay, well, you know, I'm gonna knock this guy out with the right hook and it's just gonna land at this time or whatever, and boom, he's gonna go out, and then it happens, right? But it's not only because you're training your body through like sports or whatever to perceive that or to receive that, which I would say is a great way to actually implement some kind of manifestation if you're attempting to do that work with the body, because like you can only really manifest what the body understands at some level. So that's why a lot of the times during things like visualization or whatever, they say like, oh yeah, you know, feel that emotion inside of yourself, or feel the emotion behind that intention that you're directing, right? The concept of this is that you have to fuse with that thing, which is the essence of the aura, right? Like the aura is not just made up of you, but it's made up of everything you remember, everything you do constantly, your individuality, like all your emotions, like every like piece of hair on your body, like that is part of like the aura, and it contains information, right? Don't forget the body has like, you know, genes and cells and all this encoded information. It's almost like some kind of supercomputer, right? So like or at least partly one, right? I would say like you can almost think of it as half of your being operates on something similar to a computer, and then half your being operates on like this higher cosmic divine level. This concept of like left brain or right brain, right? So anyway, all of that stuff is part of your aura, right? Everything that you have experienced, everything you will experience is part of that. And of course, depending on who you are as an individual, that can change drastically, or it can change very little, right? So, I'm kind of out of breath here. That was a lot of talking. So, in essence, though, like that's also a like key piece, because like I think a lot of times also people sometimes see when they're trying to make development in their life that, oh yeah, you know, change isn't coming very quickly, or like, you know, this isn't coming right away or whatever, and then they get discouraged or whatever. But it's really about like having enough energy to overcome those obstacles, and this is really the concept of aura, even as we see in anime, right? Like when we come back to like Goku and Vegeta, or any other characters who like really portray that like expression of aura in terms of like color association, or some kind of like divine energy, or like ki or chi or prana or life force. This is the concept behind that. You have to have enough energy within your own body to overpower that energy that's within the field, right? So it's, if you think about it, coming back to like the sun has enough energy within like that one star to almost like I wouldn't say overpower, but greatly exceed the energy levels of all the other planets in the solar system, right? So it's really the central part of the energy that is produced in the solar system, right? So, and the interesting thing is that like people, I don't know if it was like the CIA or somebody else who ran this experiment, but they were essentially, the basis of it was like they were trying to measure the highest amount of electromagnetic energy that is associated with a human body and consciousness through, like, I forget what it's called, the one where they put the electrodes on your skin and they measure the electromagnetic radiation coming off. But they found that it wasn't love, actually, as it typically is, which I would say love in general is one of the strongest emotions one can have. And it's not just like love isn't like, oh yeah, romantic fairy tale, like, prance off into the sunset. It's more in the case of the concept of fusing with something in unity. So like I said in previous episodes, if you're like, a boxer, fighter, or something like that, and you really value martial arts, you fuse with that concept as an individual. Like, oh, now I am a martial artist, right? Because this is something so integrated into my lifestyle. Same thing occurs with like all these other concepts, which really encapsulate what love is like supposed to be, or should I say, describe it. So again, it's that concept of like unifying with something within your being to a part where you and that thing are no longer separate. You are one with that thing. But what they found in the study was love was actually not the strongest emotion or feeling that was exerted from the human electrical field. It was authenticity. And they said that authenticity was like something like 1,000 times more powerful an emotion than love was. And I think that that's like also in spiritual texts, sometimes the sun is related to that center of like vocalization and expression. So I'm having a bit of shortness of breath here today. So the sun is like sometimes like related to the concept of like expression as well. And you can really see this within terms of like everything that is in the solar system that's alive functions by the sun. The plants grow because the sun allows it. We live because the sun allows it. If there was no light, like, would we even be alive or have anything to perceive in the first place? Like, the thing is, like, that light is the thing that sustains all life in the solar system. So when we like touch on a concept like that, like, okay, well, why is it imperative that we understand something like aura or authenticity or any other stuff? Because it helps the individual express himself to the fullest capacity if one knows actually what their like true essence is. So meditation, great way to find that out. Other modalities, we could also talk about, like, of course, exercise. We always talk about on this channel, going to the gym, whatever. They found like there's a whole ton of great information actually linked to exercise, and not just like the basic, like, age less, heal diseases, generate great health, increase vitality, blah blah blah, but also things like the ability to forget traumatic memories actually is now being researched as something that is part of like hard exercise and intensity, right? So the ability to pretty much like dig into your body, when they say in the gym, like, oh yeah, dig deep, like the ability to dig so deep that you can actually like, tap into a level where all those traumatic memories are stored and allow them to move out of the body again, right? So a concept like that, or a concept that relates to something like rewiring the brain, right? Higher brain plasticity, right? Another thing associated with the ability to change the electromagnetic field around the body. Scientists are actually like now researching and proving that the brain can be rewired with thought alone. So that means that everything you think about, everything that is a frequent reoccurring thought that has intention and meaning and like focus behind it, is actually tied to your overall energy level, right? So that doesn't mean like, oh yeah, you think like one annoying thought throughout the day or whatever, or maybe like, somewhat consistently or whatever, and that means like your whole energy level's low. No, that's not what it means. It means like if you attach to that and you stay in that state, then your energy level will be low. But if you go back to thinking joyful, happy thoughts, like say, like basically ignoring that thought that was negative, then you're still in the same energy state, right? Nothing has changed. So one of the biggest like things about like understanding like all these levels, and we'll probably get into this on the next slide a little bit here, and yeah, maybe we'll go to it now. So if you can see, like, there's a lot of talking, but there's a lot of information within this concept. So you can see, obviously, there's the whole energy field. So the difference between those higher levels of light, like say the indigo ray up there, and like the lower levels like yellow and green, are basically that the higher level where you have indigo is the concept of objectivity in the self, meaning that what you see is not necessarily associated with you, even though you see it in relativity to you. So, how should I say this? Okay, so if you look at the solar system again, for example, the solar system has all these planets within it, right? And the sun is the central point that is exerting the energy, which we term the sun. But because all of those planets are in the solar system, that makes them a key part of, like, this whole like unified system, right? Now, if you take something else, for example, that's a bit more fleeting, like let's say this may not be a great comparison. Actually, here, I got a better one. So let's say now the solar system, there's a meteor shower in the solar system. That meteor shower that's passing through the solar system is not inherently part of what the solar system is. It's just something that is happening in relativity or in relation to the solar system. So this is really the difference between the objective viewpoint that is understanding, okay, when something is me and when something is occurring in relativity or relation to me. So, and the key point of this again is that you're able to discern the difference between those thoughts that you have that are negative or positive, and what actually is an association with you, and what is just like, what I might term, or other spiritualists might term, like something like astral debris or something like that. Just like, thoughts caused by like discoherence in the energy field, or a slight ripple in the energy field somewhere, right? But that, again, like, just because you throw a pebble in a pond, that doesn't mean that the whole energy level of the pond has changed. It could, but, most likely it's just another splash out of, like, hundreds or thousands of pebbles that won't make a difference at all, right? So if you throw a pebble in a pond and it goes back to, the same state it was in before, like, there's essentially no impact or like any like long lasting impression. So the whole overall like energetic history of that pool or whatever has not changed, right? So this is the same kind of concept of as having a thought, or having something which you are able to distinguish the association with. Is this thing inherently a part of me, or is this thing just something that is temporarily occurring in relativity to me? So it's same kind of things like the interactions you have with people. Let's say you have an argument with your friend, right? Like, maybe there was a purpose behind that, but it's just something that is not inherent to your relationship with that person. It's just something that is in relation to like whatever circumstance or conversation or topic that you are having at that time, right? So, but discerning that is really the basis of this higher dimensional consciousness that makes you who you are, right? And I think that, like, when we're very young, when we're like children or whatever, and we don't have that like sense of discernment, this is very imperative because it really is going to decide who you are, right, as an individual. So that's why, like, a lot of times, like, even things like we like value in like childhood, even if like childhood or like your young years were like not ideal or whatever, a lot of times like you can still carry certain lessons or certain aspects with you that were beneficial, right? And essentially focus your energy on that point, right? So things you learn that actually develop you into who you were meant to be, right? And by doing that over and over again, that is a long-lasting impression in the water. That is like when you throw a pebble in a pond, and it makes a ripple, and you keep throwing like the same pebble in that pond over and over again, and it keeps generating the same vibration into the water. Now, if you do that consistently, now you have changed the energy around the pond. So the pond is now somewhat entangled to a degree with that pebble or that ripple that is being generated in the pool. And this is the same thing as consciousness, right? So if you have something that keeps occurring over and over, you keep throwing the pebble in the pond and keep generating that same ripple. That's the same concept as what they talk about with manifestation, basically. It's focusing on that thing over and over and over again, intentionally, with an emotion behind it, to generate that little splash in the water every time, psychically, and then that thing will manifest itself to you. Because how should I say, it's almost like sending out a signal on, like, on a radio broadcast or whatever. That signal is now being broadcasted into the field. So it's just a matter of time before that energy, wherever it is out there somewhere dimensionally, tunes into that frequency. Because if you have like one charge attracting something, the other charge is bound to come into existence no matter how far they are apart at some point, if it's a very specific electric signature. And maybe we could go to the next image with that. And then you have like this concept where like that whole energy is now circulating around the body. So like you saw with the last image spherically, but I guess if you have a picture of a magnetic field in your mind where, like, the current runs up and then it goes in like almost like this toroidal shape, this is the concept here, where like that energy is like circulating out and around the body, and you got like this one direct beam that translates into this whole almost boundless in terms of like dimensional potential energy. So, and I would say like it's pretty interesting if you look at this stuff, because we can only contemplate about a fraction of how this stuff actually operates, because again, we live in three-dimensional reality down here in the physical realm. And you can almost think of the like red part here, like the root center, as like potential energy that's stored in the body. And like, things like, another thing that helps build the aura up is like seed retention and stuff like that. So like that's another trend that goes on with the gym, like people saying, oh yeah, conserve the vital life force inside of your body, channel it through the body, circulate it. And it's another thing in like tantra and meditation practices to like conserve the sexual energy within the body, so you can perform what's known as transmutation or internal alchemy, to transform that inside of yourself into like a life force that is given back to the body instead of being expelled from the body. So it's almost like keeping solar rays that like has been absorbed into the body. So one of the ways you can think about this is similar to the difference between the atmosphere on Mercury and Venus. On Venus, the energy that is absorbed by the atmosphere doesn't change the temperature too much at night, because the atmosphere holds a lot of the energy that absorbs from the solar radiation. On Mercury, the temperature drops a lot at night because there's practically no atmosphere. There's nothing to keep the heat in. So when it comes to this concept of potential energy at the base of your spine, here symbolized by the red center, then that energy that is almost contained at the root essentially acts like almost like this stored battery, this potential energy. And then moving it up through the sacral center goes into more like dynamic state, where instead of being like stone or solidified, it's like water. And then going up to the higher state, it becomes like fire. And at this center, it becomes kinetic energy. So, and beyond that, I can't really tell you. It reaches some higher dimensional state where it's like broadcasted into the field as something beyond kinetic energy. It's like almost like magnetic or even beyond magnetic energy at this point. And beyond that, it becomes like spiritual energy and maybe what they would refer to as ether. And like, beyond that, we can't even really describe fully in terms of what it means. But the basis here is that as you move that energy up through the body, as you move that auric or vital life force energy up through the body, it becomes more refined and it becomes more associated with these elements of light. So again, as we know from a lot of spirituality, like, light is associated with things like angels, creator force, sun. So all this like creative energy. So like, in Egyptian times, they would have referred to this almost as the energy of Ra, the sun god, right? So that vital life force energy that is able to ensure the world stays in balance, right? So this is almost the essence of like what would be known as the right hand path in magic here. So that's a lot of talking. Yeah, I usually don't talk this much straight for in a day, but in essence, this is a big concept. But so that is the crux of that concept in terms of like how that stuff plays into the aura and how like that circulating energy is actually contained within the body. But so far we've covered like quite a few actually modalities here. We've covered meditation, we've covered exercise, we covered seed retention, we covered, well, maybe we could add this to the list, chi or meridian activation through either what's known as acupressure or acupuncture. And that's another one that is meant to channel the life force of the body in certain ways. Another one is through again, I'm not what's the word here, endorsing, or what's the word, encouraging this in any way, but like drugs are another one that like changes the electromagnetic field of the body. So again, not encouraging anybody to do drugs here. I'm just listing this as a modality of something that changes the energy in which the brain forms associations with, and therefore changes the aura. So that's another reason why like spiritual people go on like ayahuasca trips and stuff like that, because you're tapping into you're overloading the senses so that it could focus in on like one key aspect or signature in the field, right? So but to have that state, you have to reach like a super blissed out state basically inside the self, which is why like a lot of people or a lot of gurus still like do it the traditional way, where they just do meditation. They don't involve any like drugs or anything like that, is because that basis is that you're creating that high blissful state inside the body, because the body essentially, it's almost like a chemistry set, right? And if you mix certain chemicals together, like eventually you get drugs, right? So like there's for example, there's like receptors in the body which are like like meant to secrete like DMT, or meant to produce DMT, certain organs or glands in the body. The pineal and pituitary glands, for example, those things secrete DMT. DMT, if you don't know, stands for dimethyltryptamine, which is the strongest psychedelic on the planet. So this it really occurs in stuff like dreaming, for instance, right? Where we see a whole lot of stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense, but like it has some kind of association to us in one way or another. Basis of that is that like DMT, this molecule, which sometimes termed the spirit molecule, is meant to open us up to a new perception of thinking, or a new dynamic of reality. And essentially through this, your brain plasticity again goes up. So the ability to increase the neuroplasticity in the body and therefore change the electromagnetic field to a greater extent. So it's actually proven, once again I'll list this, that things like juggling or stuff like that actually also increase the brain plasticity, and increase the brain's ability to rewire itself, therefore. So again, when we talk about aura, there's so much concepts that are really involved in, like, you know, making this ability or aspect of the individual self manifest itself to the fullest capacity. And I would say one of the main ways that one could like focus on this is like something as simple as something that a lot of people do like before every meditation or before every like prayer or whatever, or you know, before a lot of these practices, even martial arts and whatever, is like you set your intention. What do you want your intention to be, right? So again, I think that this is important for like almost that that state of, okay, well, you know, if I have the ability to tap into all this energy in the field, as seen with like the aurora, for example, if the earth can tap into the energy in its field with the sun, and I can do the same because I am part of the earth, then what am I going to direct my energy to? So it really becomes, see, the lights are flashing here. See, that's a sign that the cosmos is with us. So again, it becomes a matter of getting clear on your intention, right? So again, you can have like the best or the most energy in the world, but if you can't direct it clearly, or you can't tap into the ability to like wield it, rather, then you are missing a key element of like that dynamic, right? So what you really need is like practice getting clear on that intention. So that's like one of the reasons why, again, meditation is good. In essence, though, that's a lot of the main modalities which are kind of like behind aura and how you can increase aura. And eventually, and it kind of does stand to reason that, like, you know, some of the stuff we see in Dragon Ball actually is like probably less sci-fi-ish than you think, because like, even as I said, you know, on this chart you can see when you go up the colors in terms of their frequency, going from like red to orange to yellow to green to blue to indigo to purple, you see this connection to higher divine energy. And it's the same kind of thing we see in Dragon Ball with like Goku and Vegeta, right? You know, they're training with Beerus and Whis, and then like, you know, they learn how to tap into like Super Saiyan God, then Super Saiyan Blue. So like they're going up these like energy levels in terms of being able to manifest their energy at a higher state akin to that of a divine being, right? But the essence is that not only do they have to, quote unquote, shatter through the limits of strength as they know them, but they also are refining their internal energy to be more precise, to be more clear and focused, so that they could draw that energy out to its highest potential. And as I said earlier, when you go up these energy centers, you get more light-based, you get more associated with the concept of electromagnetic energy. So when it's at the lower centers, it's more potential energy. Going up, it comes to kinetic energy. Going up higher than that, it turns into more light and electromagnetic based energy. So, and then it gets to a state where it reaches even beyond that, and we're touching into almost like the crown area at that point. So Ooh. So yeah, that's that's the gist of like a lot of that which we've talked about around aura. Maybe we'll go to the next picture now. We'll talk about the opposite of the northern lights, which is actually known as the southern lights, which is I believe if I'm not butchering this, comment below if I got it, like if this is accurate, but I believe it's termed it's Aurora Australis. I think it's the Aurora Australis, which is the opposite, or the southern lights compared to the northern lights, the opposite of the Aurora Borealis, the Aurora Australis. So, of course, as we can see, this appears at the southern pole, or closer to it, rather, and essentially you see like the similar effect that goes on near the northern lights, but the reason why these are occurring towards the poles is the same as why we see like on a magnet that you have north and south, and at the north and south poles the electromagnetic field is the strongest, because that's where the lines of the electromagnetic force are closest together. So the most electromagnetic force is exerted in those two areas. So this is why that energy appears over the north and south pole. And I know this might seem simple, but like, I think a missing piece to that equation is that, like, essentially when you have this effect going on of essentially these lights, or auroras, or electromagnetic energy appearing at these 2 points, what you have is not only a bending of light waves and an expression of like the electromagnetic field around both of the objects, the sun and the earth, but you also have like this almost like a luminescence, or maybe that's not how you say it, but I can't think of the word iridescence or something like that. It's the effect of basically like you get with like a shimmering stone or something like that, like even like a crystal or something like that like reflects light in a certain way. So essentially this effect is it changes like almost the atmosphere around it. And like as you can see from like on the picture here, and maybe we'll go into the next picture as well, this is the last picture here, like you can really see like the energy around like this area of the earth is really clear. And like for most of the time you can actually see these lights, but a lot of the times when you do see them clearly, like the background like we see here in terms of like the sky is like it's perfectly clear, or not maybe perfect, but it's almost entirely clear. Like you could see the stars behind it, you could see whatever. And it's because like the wind is, how should I say, it's in a certain harmony with the environment. So all of the energy is majestically flowing and moving together. And this is really part of the result of those electromagnetic field lines, like I said, being really densely packed together. It's that you don't have as much turbulence in the environment, right? Which is maybe perhaps the reason why we see these areas like really cold on the planet, like the North and South Pole, is because the energy in the environment, it can't move as much, it can't exert itself or heat up as much, right? Because there is that kind of a lack of fluctuation, right? So in essence, I wanted to bring that up though. So yeah, we talked about quite a bit today so far. I don't think I'm gonna wrap it up just yet, but we'll probably go that way. Um, so yeah, again, we covered like concepts in anime that kind of translate into this concept of aura. We talked about human perception of things. It translates into aura. What is really like accumulated within one's aura, what that really means when you're broadcasting a signal into the field, some modalities about how to increase aura, going over them again. I'm going to take a sip of water before I go over them again. So going over them again, they were meditation, exercise, seed retention, I guess placing your attention on something, martial arts, yoga, anything like that, any kind of dynamic movement of anything around the body actually, juggling, another one. So that's 7, so like that's more than enough, but you can get the idea. The concept is that doing exercise is moving parts of the body, even if it's like on a spiritual level, at some aspect is imperative for you channeling that energy around the body, right? So of course, as we know, like those are kind of some ways that we can go around, like I guess altering the energy flow around the human body, and therefore affecting the energy in the environment. And it's interesting that I'm not going to go back to this picture. We'll just leave this picture. But if you guys noticed from earlier, when I had that other picture up, where you saw like the whole light body and the spheres around it, it kind of looks like similar to almost like a wormhole if you think about it. And the interesting thing about that is that light is constantly expanding. It's constantly radiating outwards, constantly getting more and more energized and energetic. And the concept of a wormhole is that you can pretty much like take, or at least like the opening of a wormhole is that you're transporting one thing from one dimension through another dimension back into the same dimensional level, but across some distance, right? And if you think about the aspect of consciousness or the aspect of the human body, it's kind of linked the same way. Maybe it's through like what we would term as entanglement or tunneling or superposition, but all of these concepts are essentially focused on the key point that you can take energy and manifest it in some way across space and time. Because not only when all those auric layers are perfectly resonating together do you have this harmonized energy field, but you also have the ability to tap into energy anywhere in the cosmos of any variety, right? Across multiple dimensions. And the concept behind this that is so imperative is that, when you really resolve any of those blockages or energetic debris or leaks or any kind of like rips or anything like that in the aura, so your aura is perfectly harmonious and resonating, then essentially you have this aspect of you being able to not only believe in yourself wholeheartedly, but your ability to wield that energy and hold up your sword, as we say. But being able to hold up the sword, again, requires immense amount of strength, but realizing that you have that potential within you and it's up to you to bring it out is really the most important thing. And that's why I think so many guys in this era, especially like young guys, like things like Dragon Ball, right? Because like it's the concept that no matter how many times these guys get knocked down, they will stand back up, right? Like, if you've seen the Tournament of Power arc in like Dragon Ball Super, how many times did these guys get like knocked down and still stand back up, And I don't know if I said this on like last week here, or maybe it was on like my other platform or whatever, but I remember saying like a lot of times in like things like fighting or things like battle, one of the most important things is that like sometimes it's just by getting back up that like it breaks the opponent's will. Like the guy who knocked you down, sometimes you getting back up is just enough to like be like. And you even have that moment within the Tournament of Power arc where like Jiren looks at Goku after he gets blasted, and like everybody's telling Goku get up, Beerus is like get up Saiyan or whatever, right? So like and Jiren looks at him, he's like, he can't have any strength left, this shouldn't be happening, right? So it's just like that aspect of you just getting up after like the opponent or like life or whatever your challenger going against has thrown everything at you, and you just stand back up. Sometimes that's just enough to like overcome that obstacle just by itself, right? So, and one of the last things I'll say actually as we wrap up today's episode is back to the concept of authenticity, which I brought up earlier. That being 1,000 times more powerful or whatever it is than the emotion or feeling of love. The concept, and I was contemplating this last night, is that fighting or doing battle doesn't feel like doing battle if you have it from the viewpoint of simply expressing yourself. That being said, if you're doing something that has previously or at some point been perceived as challenging or something like that, but you simply see it as like now you transforming into this version of yourself, which just does that as an aspect of who you are, it doesn't seem like battle or some challenge you have to overcome, because it's simply about you now expressing yourself as that individual or that person who sees that as a part of their identity. So it's not battle, it's just you being you, and by doing that you overcome the challenge instinctually. So it's not a challenge or a barrier or a hurdle anymore. It's just something that you would do automatically, right? Or instinctually, on instinct. So with that being said, I think we'll wrap it up there today. This has been Moonstruck right here on Riot Radio. I encourage you guys to follow me on social media, like and subscribe. If you enjoyed the content, comment below what you enjoyed most about this. If you enjoyed the concept on aura today, comment aura below. And maybe I'll do some more videos like that in the future. Follow me on Instagram at top_sorcerer. Check out my other channel, Sword of Mercury. I will link all my links in the description below. Follow us on DC Media Hub right here on Riot Radio, and I will see you next week on Moonstruck.